The world's eyes often focus on Washington, Beijing, or Moscow when talking about global power shifts. But in the heart of Africa, something quiet yet seismic is happening. The Sahel region, long treated as a periphery of world politics, is now forming its own center of gravity. And leading this transformation is Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. When Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger declared the birth of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, many dismissed it as symbolic. But symbolism matters. For decades, these nations were seen as weak, divided, and dependent. Now, for the first time in modern history, they are uniting under a shared vision: sovereignty, dignity, and independence from outside control. The AES isn't just a political pact. It's a statement to the world: Africa will no longer be dictated to. These countries are pooling military resources, harmonizing defense strategies, and openly rejecting the presence of foreign forces that once claimed to be their protectors. And while critics say this alliance cannot stand against larger global powers, history shows us that unity often matters more than sheer size. Think about it. A decade ago, few believed the BRICS nations could challenge Western-led institutions. Yet today, BRICS has expanded and is shaping trade, energy, and finance. In the same way, the Sahel Alliance, though young, has the potential to be Africa's geopolitical BRICS moment. For Traoré, this is personal. At only 36 years old, he represents a new African leadership that refuses to bow to Paris, Washington, or anyone else. His speeches, often filled with fire and defiance, resonate far beyond Burkina Faso. They've become rallying cries for African youth across the continent, many of whom see the AES not just as a regional bloc, but as the seed of a Pan-African renaissance. But beneath the pride and rhetoric lies a deeper strategy. By forming the AES, these nations gain negotiating power, not only with Europe, but also with rising partners like Russia, China, and yes, even India. They can leverage their natural resources, uranium, gold, oil, and agricultural wealth as bargaining chips in global markets. Suddenly, what was once seen as poor, unstable Africa is becoming a prize that multiple global players are vying for. And here's the twist. While the West frames the AES as a rebellion, the people of the Sahel see it as liberation. Massive crowds have poured into the streets of Ouagadougou and Niamey, waving flags and portraits of Traoré, celebrating this newfound sense of ownership over their destiny. For the first time in decades, ordinary Africans feel that their leaders are speaking their voice. But make no mistake, this shift won't go uncontested. Already, France has withdrawn troops, the European Union has raised alarms, and Western media paints the AES as a dangerous experiment. Yet the more the West criticizes, the stronger local support becomes. And that is the paradox. The louder the pushback, the deeper the legitimacy of Traoré's movement. The world is beginning to notice. What seemed like a regional shakeup is fast becoming a global conversation. Is the Sahel becoming the heart of Africa's resistance against old colonial systems? Could this alliance redraw the geopolitical map of the continent? One thing is certain, the AES is no longer a footnote in world politics. Under Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, it's becoming a headline. For more than a century, France was not just a foreign partner to Africa, it was the master of the game. Its presence ran so deep that the term France-Afrique was coined to describe the invisible hand Paris held over its former colonies. From military bases to trade agreements, from language to currency, French influence shaped the political and economic DNA of West Africa. But today, that grip is slipping. And nowhere is this decline more visible than in the Sahel. Let's rewind. After independence, African nations were technically free, but France maintained control in very real ways. Take the CFA franc, a currency tied directly to the French treasury, which gave Paris influence over African economies for decades. Or consider the series of defense pacts that allowed French troops to station themselves in African capitals, supposedly to protect these nations from insurgencies. In reality, France was both the referee and the player, dictating politics, backing coups, and ensuring leaders who aligned with French interests stayed in power. But history has a way of shifting when the people no longer accept the status quo. Across Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, frustrations boiled over. Citizens began to ask tough questions. Why, after decades of French military presence, was terrorism still spreading? Why, with Africa's vast natural resources, were ordinary people still trapped in poverty while French companies reaped the rewards? The anger erupted onto the streets. In city squares from Ouagadougou to Niamey, massive protests broke out. French flags were set ablaze, embassies stormed, and chants demanding France out echoed through the Sahel. This wasn't just youthful anger, it was a generational reckoning. And then came the turning point. Ibrahim Traoré's rise in Burkina Faso, alongside military leaders in Mali and Niger, symbolized a new defiance. These leaders wasted no time. They expelled French troops, shut down French media outlets, and tore up decades-old agreements that kept Paris in control. For the first time, France's authority wasn't just being challenged, it was being dismantled, piece by piece. The French government, of course, tried to reframe the narrative. They insisted that their presence was necessary to fight terrorism, to stabilize the region, to ensure security. But the people no longer believed it. The younger generation saw France not as a protector, but as a parasite. And once that perception took root, no amount of political spin could reverse it. To make matters worse for Paris, rivals were quick to fill the vacuum. Russia, through both official diplomacy and private military contractors, seized the opportunity to present itself as an alternative partner. China, with its infrastructure deals and financial clout, deepened its foothold. And in the background, other nations like Turkey, India, and the Gulf states began eyeing Africa with renewed interest. And the irony is sharp. France, which once saw Africa as its backyard, now finds itself being pushed out of the front yard altogether. The collapse of French influence in the Sahel is not just a regional embarrassment, it's a geopolitical earthquake. Because if France can lose control here, what's stopping the same pattern from spreading to Central Africa or even to its strongholds in West Africa like Senegal and Ivory Coast? The writing on the wall is clear. The Sahel's rejection of France is not an isolated event. It's the opening act of a larger African transformation. What once seemed unthinkable, that Africa could break free from the shadow of Paris, is now happening before our very eyes. And so the question emerges, if France is out, who steps in? As France retreats and Western influence wanes across Africa, a vacuum opens. A space too valuable to remain empty. And in geopolitics, vacuums never stay unfilled for long. Russia is already stepping in with military support. China continues to build roads, ports, and railways. But quietly, steadily, another player is moving into position: India. For decades, India's foreign policy was cautious, almost hesitant. The country was consumed by its own domestic challenges: poverty, development, infrastructure. Africa was a partner, yes, but never a priority. That's changing, and the timing could not be perfect. Unlike Europe's colonial powers, India shares no dark history with Africa. There are no memories of exploitation, no scars of direct occupation. Instead, there is a bond rooted in shared struggles. Both regions endured foreign domination. Both fought for independence. Both faced the uphill climb of building nations out of broken economies. This common ground makes India's rise in Africa not only acceptable, but appealing. Consider the groundwork already laid: Trade between India and Africa has quietly grown to over $100 billion annually. Indian companies are investing in African tech startups, agriculture, and pharmaceuticals. India supplies vaccines, affordable medicine, and digital infrastructure, resources that directly improve lives, not just balance sheets. In many African capitals, India is not seen as an exploitative giant, but as a partner in progress. But there's a deeper layer. As the U.S. and China lock horns in their global rivalry, Africa becomes a battleground for influence. China offers money, but with strings attached. The U.S. offers security guarantees, but often tied to political conditions. But India offers something different. An alternative. A partnership without the heavy hand of conditionality. A relationship that feels less like control and more like cooperation. This is exactly where Ibrahim Traoré's rhetoric resonates. Leaders like him who call for